Dr. Mo looked slightly surprised at his left hand, then turned his gaze to Hanli. He disdainfully remarked that it seemed Hanli hadn't been idle for a year and had even trained in some strange skill. However, he mocked that Hanli really thought he could be his opponent by relying on cheap tricks. He declared that personally participating to exercise his limbs wouldn't be a bad idea and that he would let Hanli make the first move. Hanli ignored Dr. Mo's insult, determined to gain the initiative by attacking first. He positioned his short sword in his left hand in front of his body, drawing Dr. Mo's gaze. Silently, he slid a white paper bag from his right wrist, spreading a white powder that quickly turned into thick smoke, enveloping Hanli and diffusing throughout the house, making the entire view indistinct. Hanli disappeared into the smoke. Dr. Mo, surprised but disdainful, held his breath fearing poison in the smoke. With his profound skill, he could hold his breath for quite a while. He snorted and struck the smoke repeatedly, dispersing it and returning the room to normal, but Hanli had vanished. Dr. Mo, not panicking, kept a constant watch, confident he could detect any movement. Observing the room closely, Dr. Mo noticed everything seemed untouched. How could Hanli disappear in such a small space? Doubtful, he coughed and staggered closer to the spot where Hanli had disappeared, sensing a murderous intent nearby. Although Dr. Mo's eyes carefully scanned the room, he found nothing unusual. While pondering, he heard a sound above his head. He immediately realized Hanli was hiding in the roof beam. He struck upward, only to find a black metal bell hanging, incessantly ringing. There was no sign of Hanli. Suddenly, a cold light, with the speed of lightning, pierced towards Dr. Mo's abdomen. He twisted his body instinctively, narrowly escaping the blow that almost eviscerated him. After the attack, he quickly retreated, maintaining a defensive stance, while furiously looking towards the direction of the attack. Hanli emerged from the ground, having used a combination of soft bones art, breath control art, and false hiding technique. His clothes were the same color as the floor, making him nearly invisible. He held the short sword and seemed irritated for missing his target. Dr. Mo, startled by the attack, felt his heart racing uncontrollably. He was not inexperienced in danger, but that near-death experience shook him, especially since it was caused by Hanli, whom he had always despised. Taking a deep breath, he declared in a dry voice that he had underestimated Hanli and that he deserved to be taken seriously. Slowly raising his hands to eye level, Dr. Mo looked tenderly at them, as if he had completely forgotten about Hanli. Hanli, in turn, raised his eyebrows, sneered, gripped his short sword firmly, and approached Dr. Mo with measured and confident steps. Demonic silver hands were the three words uttered by Dr. Mo, carrying a demonic energy that made Hanli stop immediately. As Dr. Mo's voice faded, a wave of murderous intent emanated from his body, flooding the residence like howling winds and torrential rains, forcing Hanli to retreat. Hanli, realizing that Dr. Mo had decided to use a definitive technique, knew his opponent no longer underestimated him. Infuriated by Hanli's short sword, Dr. Mo was ready to showcase his supreme skill. He sneered at Hanli, stating that witnessing his demonic silver hands was a fortune accumulated over 3 lifetimes. Dr. Mo's words buzzed in Hanli's ears, but without the infusion of qi, they were less concerning. However, the mention of the supreme technique made Hanli look at Dr. Mo's hands, which were swollen and had a bright silver hue, reflecting the sunlight in a frightening manner. Now more worried, Hanli gripped his short sword, his hands slippery with sweat. Despite his inner turmoil, Hanli maintained a calm appearance, trying to mask his fear. Dr. Mo, however, was dissatisfied. He expected Hanli to beg for mercy, but instead, he received sarcasm in response. Hanli was clearly trying to destabilize Dr. Mo, hoping to create an opportunity. Dr. Mo, perceiving Hanli's intentions, decided to attack without further delay. He clapped his silver palms together, producing a metallic sound, and launched himself into the air, his robust hands advancing like a storm. He intended to capture Han Li with a single powerful strike. Focused, Han Li aimed for Dr. Mo's neck, a vulnerable area. Surprised by Han Li's audacity, Dr. Mo laughed frantically, certain of his victory. He directed one silver hand at Han Li's sword and the other at his shoulder blade. Although the attack seemed relentless, Dr. Mo used only half of his strength, concerned about not seriously injuring Han Li. Ignoring the true strength of the blow, Han Li treated the attack seriously. He swung his short sword, trying to protect the upper part of his body. Dr. Mo's silver hands advanced unrelentingly. Han Li's sword met the silver palm but failed to cause damage, only producing sparks. Taking advantage of this, Dr. Mo broke Han Li's sword with a swift movement. With the other hand, he formed a claw and aimed at Han Li's shoulder blade, trying to capture him alive. Even in this situation, Han Li did not panic. He moved agilely, transforming his body into a column of smoke. Dr. Mo, shocked by Han Li's ghostly technique, continued his attack, trying to block the smoke. The smoke, however, moved in all directions, evading capture. In an instant, it shot to the far left corner of the residence and transformed back into Han Li. Dr. Mo, surprised, realized he had underestimated his opponent. Han Li, with unexpected skill, managed to escape the direct attack, showing that the fight was far from over. The battle between the two was intensifying, with Han Li proving to be a more formidable adversary than Dr. Mo had imagined. Dr. Mo lightly lands in the spot where Han Li was just moments before. He turns to Han Li, who is in poor condition, and observes him. Han Li, visibly exhausted, breathes heavily, with sweat covering his forehead. His pale skin and flushed cheeks are clear signs that the evasion technique he used, the gliding smoke steps, consumed a large part of his vital energy, leaving him almost too weak for another attempt. Han Li tries to relax his body to ease the muscle tension, aware that any moment of recovery is crucial for his survival. He notices that his left hand, still trembling, is numb and unable to grip his short sword, forcing him to rely solely on his right hand for the remainder of the fight. Reflecting on his situation, he smiles bitterly, aware of his increasing limitations. Despite his exhaustion, Han Li decides to use his trump card, a technique he had reserved for a desperate situation. He looks at the sun through a window, estimating that the time is ideal to act. Unable to recover the short sword stuck in the wall, Han Li takes another weapon from his bag, a short polished dagger, and readies it in his right hand. He assumes an offensive stance, pointing the dagger at Dr. Mo, who calmly watches everything. Instead of attacking, Dr. Mo tries to convince Han Li to surrender, arguing that he does not intend to seriously harm him. He praises Han Li's technique but points out its limitations and suggests that Han Li won't be able to replicate the feat. However, Mo's speech only strengthens Han Li's determination, who realizes the manipulation attempt and refuses the offer, provoking Dr. Mo with his dagger. This provocation causes Dr. Mo to lose his patience. He quickly advances towards Han Li, using a technique that seems to shorten the distance between them supernaturally, a skill that frightens those who witness it. Han Li, in response, retreats and adopts a defensive stance, brandishing his dagger to block Mo's advance. Ignoring Han Li's defense, Dr. Mo attacks with both hands, confident that his combat technique will easily overcome Han Li's improvised defense. However, Han Li surprises his opponent by revealing that the dagger's position wasn't random, he was setting a trap. Mo, upon noticing Han Li's change in stance, slows his attack and observes the dagger, now emitting a strange green light. In an unexpected move, Han Li rushes forward like a fired arrow, his posture and speed surprising Dr. Mo. Dr. Mo tries to react, using his palms to intercept Han Li's advance. However, Han Li performs a complex technique, multiplying the image of his dagger in several directions, confusing Dr. Mo, thinking he has identified the real dagger, and Mo prepares to destroy the weapon. However, Han Li's real dagger was elsewhere, ready for a critical strike. The scene is a game of nerves, strategies, and skills, where each move is calculated to outmaneuver the opponent. Han Li, exhausted but determined, faces the powerful Dr. Mo, whose pride and abilities are put to the test. At the crucial moment when the two adversaries were about to confront each other, Han Li made a small adjustment to the position of his dagger, slightly changing the angle of the blade. For Dr. Mo, this tiny change was devastating, throwing his perception into chaos. The tip of the dagger reflected a bright light, creating several orbs of white light that blinded Dr. Mo, preventing him from attacking. Dr. Mo quickly tried to retreat and close his eyes, but it was already too late. The white light hurt his eyes, causing intense pain and incessant tears. Even when trying to open his eyes, all he could see was a vast expanse of white, unable to distinguish shapes. He then realized that he had fallen into yet another of Han Li's traps. Drawing on his experience from many years of travel and facing dangers, Dr. Mo tried to buy time to recover, retreating and protecting his body with the invulnerable demon's silver hands. He decided not to attack until he could see clearly again. The disdain he felt for Han Li disappeared, replaced by heightened caution, comparable to that in life-and-death battles with powerful enemies from his past. Trying to hear Han Li's movements, Dr. Mo remained alert for any sound. Suddenly, he noticed a shadow passing quickly, followed by a sharp noise and a cold breeze. Instead of being frightened, he was pleased, believing that Han Li was making a mistake by attacking directly. Dr. Mo deliberately slowed his reaction to create an opening, expecting an attack on his throat. When the attack came, he confidently grabbed the tip of the dagger, unafraid of its sharp blade. However, Han Li tried to pull the dagger back, without success, as it was trapped in the grip of the demon's silver hands. Despite feeling triumphant, Dr. Mo did not lower his guard. Fearing that Han Li might release the dagger and escape, he used all his strength to try to pull Han Li toward him. However, it felt as if he was holding on to nothing, which left him confused and alarmed. Before he could understand what was happening, Dr. Mo noticed a sharp object approaching his throat. He acted instinctively, moving to avoid the attack and only sustaining a superficial cut. In a quick motion, he threw himself to the ground and rolled away from Han Li, only standing up when he felt he was at a safe distance. Pressing his neck to stop the bleeding, Dr. Mo felt a growing fear. He had narrowly escaped certain death, and his perception of the situation had changed. Looking at Han Li, he realized his vision had returned, allowing him to see clearly again. Han Li, with a dissatisfied expression, was holding a small sharp weapon that seemed to be a modified version of the original dagger, now resembling a strange awl. This weapon had caused the wound on Dr. Mo's neck. Examining the blade he still held, Dr. Mo discovered that it was hollow, serving only as a cover to conceal the real attack, which explained the lightness he had felt earlier. This discovery, instead of increasing his anger, made him colder and more calculating. He had been deceived by a trick he considered childish, but now he recognized Han Li's cunning. The battle was far from over, and both knew that the next move could be decisive. Dr. Mo, a seasoned and shrewd figure of Jianghu, was perplexed when he realized why Han Li insisted on leaving the door open upon entering the room. This seemingly simple decision was part of a larger strategy, revealing the astute use of sunlight as a determining factor. Dr. Mo, surprised by the depth of Han Li's schemes, wondered how someone so young could be so cunning and perceptive. It was hard for him to accept that Hanli possessed such strategic ability, which seemed disproportionate to his age and experience. He began to ponder whether Hanli was a natural genius or perhaps a reincarnation of a prodigy. As these thoughts crossed his mind, Dr. Mo felt a chill run down his spine, which made him alert and very cautious of the young man. This state of tension led him to adopt a defensive posture, avoiding any rash actions. Hanli, on the other hand, also observed Dr. Mo, intrigued by the opponent's hesitation to attack him. This created a tense pause between the two, with both trying to decipher the other's thoughts, resulting in a silent standoff. Suddenly, Hanli broke the silence, suggesting they make peace or that he surrender, leaving Dr. Mo surprised and skeptical. Hanli reinforced his intention by throwing his weapons to the ground, smiling seemingly innocently, which only increased Dr. Mo's distrust. He questioned Hanli's motives, suspecting a trap. Hanli responded only with an enigmatic smile, which left Dr. Mo even more unsettled. However, after some time, Dr. Mo seemed to understand the situation, causing him to laugh uncontrollably, admitting that he had fallen victim to Hanli's plans. This laughing confession, however, did not lessen the seriousness of the situation. Hanli, for his part, remained calm, stating that the time to resolve the impasse had come. Dr. Mo then agreed, hardening his expression as he prepared for the final confrontation. Both assessed their chances of success, carefully planning their next actions. The tension grew until Hanli revealed that Dr. Mo's life was in his hands, due to a poison applied to his blade called wrapped fragrant silk. This revelation was initially met with skepticism, but Dr. Mo soon realized the seriousness of the claim when he felt the effects of the poison in his body. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Dr. Mo tried to remain calm, claiming that his medical skills, which he himself had taught Hanli, would be sufficient to neutralize the poison. However, Hanli explained that the poison was complex and rare, with its secret formula hidden in a book that Dr. Mo had forgotten. This disarmed Dr. Mo, who realized he was in a more serious situation than he initially thought. Dr. Mo, vaguely recalling the poison and its recipe, realized he had underestimated Hanli. The situation became clear: Hanli had control and the ability to decide Dr. Mo's fate. Hanli, showing cold and calculating control, suggested they could reach a peace agreement, but made it clear that he had the upper hand. The name of the poison, wrapped fragrant silk, sounded harmless, almost romantic, but its potency was deadly and insidious, like the possessive love of a woman. This complex and rare poison demonstrated not only Hanli's ability to manipulate the situation in his favor but also his determination to surpass Dr. Mo. The story culminates in a moment of uncertainty, with both characters facing the harsh reality of their circumstances. Dr. Mo, confronted with mortality and Hanli's genius, is forced to reconsider his position. Hanli, on the other hand, remains an enigma, a young man whose actions and intentions are as unpredictable as his ability to manipulate the fate of those around him.